Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm the Technical Critic, and I know, it's completely and utterly despicable of me to come back here and ask you to view my videos. Well, I'm like a deadbeat dad, but you know what? I'm trying. I've been through a lot, and I had some time, so I figured, you know what? I will make this review for you guys. And it's one that I wanted to make for quite a while, but for some reason, I've never been able to get around to it. This is going to be my review for Seasons 1, Seasons 2, and Seasons 3 of Orange is the New Black. The season dropped a couple days ago, and I managed to finish watching it. And right now, I'm going to tell you why I hate the first two seasons and why I love this third season. Alright, so let's begin. This series, this Netflix series, is based off a book written by an actual person who went to actual prison, and it's supposed to highlight everything that's wrong with the prison system. To be quite honest, it's probably what's wrong with the show. The main story, I've never read the book, but the main story, and that's not what we're here to critique, the main story of this show is about Piper Chapman, a preppy, waspy girl, mid-30s, who now, because she did some really bad shit in her college years, not even bad shit, just some stupid shit, she got suckered into carrying drugs from one country to another by her really, really good-looking girlfriend of the time. And now she's been fingered as a member of this drug ring and has to go down for the crime. 36 months, I believe, is what it is, and so she ends up in prison. And to be quite frank, she is dull. The first season concentrates on taking this regular person and just completely compressing and corrupting them until there's nothing left except this ball of not even sadness, just apathy. And she's just there. She's crushed into a little cube of existence, and that is her. And while it completely and utterly illustrates what prison does to people and the sheer hopelessness of being stuck in one place, as the theme song at the opening does get across, that's not fun to watch. Okay, it's in terms of story building, in terms of character arc, in terms of character study, it's amazing. But in terms of entertainment value, kind of awful. On top of that, you've got this whole cast of other characters that surrounds Piper, and they're super, super interesting. However, you only get little tidbits of them here and there, and it's used to keep the audience invested. Every single tidbit you get of who this person is, why they're here, how they ended up in prison, that's what keeps the viewer watching, and they use that throughout the series to keep you invested. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, because sometimes you get characters that you care about, and you really do want to know what their backstory is. Or sometimes you get characters that you don't care about, but their backstory is still pretty damn interesting and you want to watch. But then you get the characters that you don't care about, and quite frankly, their backstory is not that interesting to begin with. Or you find out that, hey, you know what, this terrible person on the inside was a terrible person on the outside, and you're justified in your complete and utter hatred and contempt of that character. But Season 1, the other characters support her. I feel, however, though, that as one of the shows that Netflix put out, it really did set the standard in terms of what we got later on. I mean, it really did define that, okay, if you're going to have a Netflix show online, you're going to have lots of filler with lots of hardcore imagery. And when I say that, I mean sex and violence. And to be quite honest, you don't need that. I mean, it's welcome. I mean, you've got a bunch of beautiful girls making lesbianism with each other. You've instantly got the guy demographic, the typical stereotypical guy demographic. But beyond that, the storytelling was patchwork here and there. It did have an arc. It did take some interesting turns. So I think that Season 1 was okay overall. It was a good first attempt. That's what makes Season 2 so contemptible. I don't know what it is with Season 2s. Season 2s, they always seem to fail for some reason. And for those of you who know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. Season 2 we start with compressed, waspy Piper, and then we take away her love interest, and we smush her even more. We take away one of the most interesting characters. Alex Voss gets released, so she's out of the picture. Your most interesting character is gone. So now we're focused on her. And the main character ends up basically drifting out of her own story. It stops being about her, and it starts being about this new character that comes into the prison. Some woman named V, who basically turns the entire prison into a gang system, and basically completely upsets the balance that you've come to expect. And to be quite honest, she's a horrible person. There's no reason you should root for her. And she just leaves a really bad taste in your mouth. She makes all the characters that come in contact with them, all the characters that you get to know, they suddenly start acting in a manner so uncharacteristic of themselves that it literally tanks the show. It feels unfocused. You just have things happening, and while they're connected, they're not to any particular point or purpose. It's just these are events that are happening, and you're watching them, and it feels unfocused. It feels uninteresting. It feels like you're just watching things occur, and you have no real reason to get invested because you don't care about these characters because they're not the characters that were focused on in season 1. They're characters that were side characters to side characters. They were just the loud people in the background that meant to add flavor. And quite frankly, you don't care after a while. You just don't care. Those bits and morsels that were strategically placed in season 1 become even more sporadic throughout season 2. There are characters that from season 1 that were very heavily relied on in season 1. You never got their backstory. You still don't get their backstory in season 2. It's not until something like season 3 that you finally learn why certain characters are in prison. Now that's not to say that there's not some good side plots. There are some good side plots. The cancer story, oh gosh, I can't remember her name. She looks like she's from the 1920s. The girl who looks like she's from the 1920s, how she ended up in prison. The nun story, that's another very interesting plot point that I think they brought up. But yeah, it had its good bits, but it was massively outweighed by its bad bits. For that, I have to say, it's not as good as season 1. Quite frankly, it's contemptible to me. I'm not ashamed to say I thought that season 2 was bad. Season 3, on the other hand, season 3 is where the show finally seems to find its stride. In season 1 and season 2, the show was too focused on showing this is prison, this is how bad prison is. Season 3, you finally get the characters coming back out of their shells, starting to cope with prison life. You see, it's absolutely ridiculous, some of the stuff that happens. Contraband trading, people writing dirty fan fiction, dealing with prison cutbacks and when things just go from bad to worse, seeing how people start to cope. You're actually watching characters deal with situations for a point and a purpose. It's not just, okay, here are things that are happening because this character says this is going to happen. It's like, no, we have a point and a purpose and a goal to get to here. There's a reason for the characters doing what they're doing, and it's one that you can sympathize with. It makes for good storytelling. On top of that, you have a lot of the good characters come back. Voss comes back. You have an interesting character named Stella in Ruby Rose. She's introduced. At the same time, you have many events happening with the old fan favorites. Someone gets thrown in prison. You get a sympathetic moment with a character that was previously contemptible and an enemy. And there's good growth overall. You see instead of having, okay, here's your main character and here's everything happening around them and you're just waiting for your favorites to pop up, instead, all of a sudden, everything is linked. Everything is put together, and it forms a wide net of the story that's allowed to capture your attention and bring you forward. And that's why I think season 3 is good. It actually ends up with something like a message of hope and hopelessness mixed in with the hopelessness. So, for that reason, I feel that season 3 is a lot better. You could actually watch each episode as an individual one and look at it and say, you know what? This is a good episode. This is a good episode. Season 2, I feel particularly, was made specifically for binge watching. This is something like, okay, you flick it on, it's in the background, you're listening to it, you don't really have to care. Same thing with season 1. These seasons were made more as a binge watch. This is more of a, hey, here's a story that you can savor. And those are my thoughts on Orange is the New Black Season 3. I honestly think it's good. Seasons 1 and 2, don't hold a candle to it. Alright, finally. Glad to get that off of my chest. So good, so good. Alright, so that's been my technical critique. I hope that you guys like this. I hope that you favor it. And I hope that you subscribe to my channel. Hopefully I'll be able to produce more content. I do have stuff coming down the pipeline. There's a couple of series that I do owe you guys an explanation on. And I will get to them, I promise. One video every 3 months is not good enough. But we shall persevere, we shall overcome. And hopefully we shall get this back on schedule once a week or twice a week, the way we should have this going. As always, please leave a comment in the description. I'd like to hear from you guys, and if your comment is interesting enough, it might just make it into the very next episode. So, I'll be looking out for you, and you look out for me. See you next time.